Have you ever felt stuck in a life that looks fine on the outside, but feels wrong on the inside? Not dramatic, not tragic, just quietly exhausting.
That feeling has a name in the Bible. It's called Egypt.
Egypt? Like pyramids, Pharaoh, ancient history?
Yes, and something much closer. Egypt isn't just a place, it's the state of being where life becomes survival, and survival replaces meaning, where people stop asking why they live and only focus on how to survive.
So slavery isn't only about chains.
No, it's about what happens when comfort becomes a prison and fear becomes normal. That's the kind of slavery that's hardest to leave because it feels safe.
So let's go into the story. Israel in Egypt. They arrive as guests and slowly become slaves.
And that's exactly how inner slavery starts. No one wakes up enslaved. It happens slowly. At first, life is manageable, then routine becomes habit. Habit becomes identity, and identity becomes a cage.
That hits hard.
Because that's most of adulthood. Slavery begins the moment a person stops imagining a different life.
Before Moses even enters the story, there's that horrifying moment. Pharaoh orders that all Hebrew baby boys be killed. Why does the Bible start the freedom story with something so dark?
Because that's exactly where freedom is always threatened. Whenever a system feels endangered, it attacks new beginnings first. Pharaoh doesn't fear armies, he fears potential.
So the babies represent?
New consciousness, new ways of being, new directions in life. And fear always tries to kill growth before it matures. That happens inside people too. Every time a new version of you wants to emerge, the old version panics. So it tries to silence the idea before it becomes real.
And then Moses is born, hidden, protected, placed in a basket and sent into the river. That's heartbreaking.
It's also one of the deepest symbols in the Bible. His mother doesn't abandon him, she releases him. Sometimes love means knowing when to let go, so something can live.
And the river carries him straight into Pharaoh's house. That feels ironic.
And intentional. Freedom is raised in the very system that enslaves. The desire for change often grows inside comfort first. Moses grows up in power, wealth, education, but something inside him never feels at home.
So Moses has everything: status, security, opportunity, and still he feels out of place.
That's the beginning of awakening. When your life looks successful, but your soul feels homeless. That quiet discomfort is the first whisper of freedom.
Most people ignore that whisper.
Yes, because listening to it costs you everything you built.
Then comes the moment that changes everything. Moses sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and he kills him. That's heavy.
It is, but psychologically it's not about violence. It's about the moment you can no longer tolerate injustice inside yourself. Every person reaches a point where they finally see their life clearly, and they can't unsee it.
Like when you admit, I can't keep living like this.
Yes. And that realization is dangerous to your old life. Once awareness wakes up, comfort can't hold you anymore. So Moses runs. Not from Egypt, from the life he can no longer live.
He leaves everything: status, home, future. That must feel like failure.
It feels like failure until you realize it's the first real success. You can't become who you're meant to be without losing who you were.
So Moses ends up in the desert, a shepherd, a nobody, from prince to shepherd.
And that's not a downgrade, that's purification. The desert is where identity dies, titles disappear, ego quiets. Before someone leads anything, they have to lose everything.
So the desert isn't punishment.
No, it's preparation. You can't hear your calling in noise, you hear it in silence.
And then the burning bush, the moment everyone remembers.
And one of the most misunderstood. People think it's about a miracle of fire, but it's really about a miracle of awareness. The bush burned, but isn't consumed. That's passion that doesn't destroy, purpose that doesn't burn you out, a calling that doesn't come from ego.
So not drama, clarity.
Yes, true purpose doesn't shout. It waits until you're quiet enough to hear it.
So Moses is sent back. Back to Egypt, back to Pharaoh, back to the place he ran from.
Because freedom always requires facing what you escaped. You can't heal what you avoid. You have to return, not to suffer again, but to finish the story.
So part 1 ends here. Moses returns, but Egypt hasn't changed.
Yes, and that's exactly where real transformation begins.
Okay, now Moses goes back. Back to Egypt. Back to the place he ran from. Back to Pharaoh. That takes courage.
Yes. But more than courage, it takes honesty. Because Pharaoh isn't just a king. Pharaoh is the part of us that says, this is just how life is. Don't risk stability. Don't shake the system.
So when Moses stands before Pharaoh, it's not just a confrontation between two men.
No, it's the confrontation between two voices inside every person. One voice says, stay comfortable. The other says, be free.
And Pharaoh says no, again and again.
Because change always meets resistance first. No one lets go of power, inner or outer, easily. Every time Moses says, let my people go, Pharaoh hears, let go of control.
And that's terrifying.
Yes, because control feels like safety, even when it's killing you.
Then come the plagues. Most people hear that and think punishment, anger, judgment.
But psychologically, the plagues are not punishments. They are stages of awakening. Each plague breaks another illusion that keeps slavery in place. Blood. When life loses meaning. Water turns to blood. Life stops nourishing. What once gave life now feels heavy. Psychologically, this is when people realize, what I've been living for doesn't feed me anymore. Frogs. When noise replaces peace. Frogs everywhere. No silence, no rest. This is the mind when it can't escape itself. Thoughts everywhere. No inner peace. Lice. Irritation with everything. Tiny things become unbearable. That's what happens when inner frustration grows. Nothing feels right anymore. Wild beasts. Loss of inner order. Chaos enters structure. Instinct replaces wisdom. When fear takes over, we stop acting consciously and start reacting. Disease. Systems begin to fail. The structures that once worked stop working. Health fails. Energy fails. Motivation fails. That's burnout. Boils. Pain comes to the surface. What was hidden inside comes out. Inner wounds show themselves. Hail. Chaos enters stability. The world you trusted starts to feel unsafe. Old certainties collapse. Locusts. Comfort disappears. Everything familiar gets consumed. That's the moment people realize, I can't go back to who I was. Darkness. Loss of direction. Darkness that can be felt. No vision. No clarity. But darkness isn't evil. It's the space before transformation. Death of the firstborn. Ego loses its throne. This is the hardest moment. The firstborn represents the ego identity, the version of ourselves we thought we were. For freedom to begin, that identity has to die. Not physically, psychologically.
So the plagues aren't about hurting Egypt, they're about breaking illusions?
Yes, they dismantle the false sense of control until Pharaoh finally says, go.
And then it happens. After generations of slavery, they finally leave.
But notice something important. They don't leave empty-handed. They take treasure from Egypt, gold, silver, wealth, because you never leave suffering empty. Psychologically, this means everything you endured becomes strength, wisdom, and resilience. Trauma can become wisdom. Pain can become power. You don't just escape Egypt. You transform Egypt's energy.
So they leave. But Pharaoh changes his mind. He chases them.
Because the old life always tries to pull you back. Freedom is fragile in the beginning. The old identity says, "Come back. At least you knew who you were here."
And that leads us to the sea.
Yes, the moment where fear and faith collide, but that's where part 3 begins.
So the people finally leave Egypt. And suddenly they hear the sound of chariots behind them. Pharaoh is coming. That moment feels terrifying.
Because that's what always happens when someone chooses freedom. The old life doesn't disappear quietly. It chases you. Not because it loves you, but because it doesn't want to lose you.
So standing at the sea isn't just fear of death.
No, it's fear of the unknown. Behind them is slavery, familiar pain. In front of them is freedom, unfamiliar responsibility. Most people would rather return to familiar suffering than face unfamiliar freedom.
And then the sea opens.
Yes, but notice something important. The sea doesn't open first, they step first. Freedom doesn't appear when you wait, it appears when you walk.
So they cross the sea. They're free. That should be the happy ending.
But freedom is not the end of struggle, it's the beginning of responsibility. In Egypt, they suffered, but they didn't have to decide. In the desert, they are free. And suddenly, every choice matters.
They start complaining. About food, about water, about everything.
Yes, because when people lose their chains, they discover their fear. Slavery takes your freedom. Freedom takes your excuses.
Then comes manna, food from the sky. That sounds like a miracle.
It is, but not in the way people think. Manna teaches dependence on the present. Not hoarding, not control. Only today's portion. Psychologically, it's learning to trust life one day at a time.
Then they reach Sinai. This feels like the most religious moment in the story.
It's actually the most human. Sinai is not about rules. It's about structure for freedom. Freedom without structure becomes chaos. Structure without freedom becomes slavery. The commandments are not control. They are boundaries that protect dignity.
And then Moses goes up the mountain and disappears, and the people panic.
Yes, because when inner guidance disappears, people look for something they can see. So they build the golden calf. Not because they're evil, but because they're afraid of emptiness. The calf is not just idol worship. It's the fear of not being led. The need to worship something tangible. Psychologically, it's what people do when freedom feels too big. They run back to money, status, identity, certainty, anything that gives them something solid to hold.
Then Moses comes down, sees the calf, and breaks the tablets. That always felt like rage.
It looks like rage, but it's mercy. You cannot receive higher truth while clinging to lower certainty. Law without readiness becomes oppression. So the first tablets must break, so the second ones can be received.
So breaking them wasn't failure.
It was compassion. Truth must meet people where they are, not where it wants them to be.
40 years in the desert. Why so long?
Because you can leave slavery in a night, but you can't remove slavery from the heart in a day. Egypt left their bodies quickly, but Egypt left their minds slowly. Time is not punishment. Time is healing. It's transformation.
So after everything, Egypt, the plagues, the sea, The desert, Sinai, the mistakes, the growth. They finally stand at the edge of the land, and Moses doesn't enter. That part always confused me.
This is one of the deepest moments in the entire story. Because up until now, the story has been about freedom. But here, the story becomes about something harder: maturity. Moses brings people out of slavery, but freedom is only the first step. Freedom means you are no longer owned by something. But Israel represents something else entirely. It represents what happens when you finally own yourself. You see, Moses is the voice of awakening. He is the fire that breaks chains. The courage to stand up and say, "This is not the life I was meant to live." But awakening and integration are not the same thing. Awakening shakes you. Integration stabilizes you. Moses can lead people out of Egypt, but a different quality of soul is needed to build a life in freedom. That's why Joshua leads them in, not because Moses failed, but because Moses completed his mission. You don't need the same voice that breaks chains to build a home.
So if Egypt is slavery, then what is Israel?
Israel is not just a land, and it's not just a people. Israel is a state of being. The name Israel means one who struggles toward the higher. Psychologically, Israel is the moment in life when you stop fighting yourself, when you are no longer divided between who you are and who you pretend to be. Israel is the state where you act from awareness, not fear, from responsibility, not reaction, from clarity, not habit. Egypt is survival. The desert is transformation. Israel is alignment.
So this whole story isn't really about Moses.
Moses is the beginning, but the story is about you. Every person has an Egypt where they stayed too long, a desert where they were reshaped, a Sinai where they learned responsibility, and an Israel where they finally live in alignment. The question is not, do you believe this story? The real question is, where are you in this story?
That changes everything.
Because this isn't a story about ancient people. It's a map of human growth. And maps don't judge, they guide.
So freedom isn't the end.
Freedom is the door. Responsibility is the house.
I'm speechless. Thank you for walking us through this.
Yes, thank you for listening.